So we're going to go ahead and jump in, and this session is about transitions in care today. And we're going to talk about whatever transitions mean to you in care. Feel free to ask questions of Melanie. Some of you submitted questions ahead of time, and she has those. And don't worry if you have questions. I have questions, so hopefully we can all ask questions. But feel free to unmute and ask those questions or put them in the chat as we go through this. I would briefly like to thank our sponsors, ASI and Lily, for making this free event happen today. And thank you to all of you for joining us in your busy day of caregiving. And I would like to turn it over to our wonderful hostess with the mostest, Melanie, who is a nurse and a friend and a trainer and knows all about transitions in care. Thank you for being here, Melanie. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Lisa. And how do you think I've learned so much about transitions?
By going through them.
Going through them with lots of different people and doing a lot of things right and making a lot of mistakes. And you know when I've learned more? When I've made mistakes. And so we're going to be talking about that. We're going to mostly do this as a question and answer. I'm going to start off with a little bit of some prepared stuff just to kind of give us a framework a little bit. But most of what we're going to talk about is going to be really conversational and really about, what is on your mind. What are your questions? I have looked at the ones you sent in. Lisa has those as well. So if there's something I miss or I don't get to, I'm hoping she'll bring that back to the front of my brain. Dementia Alliance, transitions in care. And so I was trying to think about how to organize this because, oh Lord, we could spend an hour on any bullet point of this talk. We could spend an hour talking about the impact of transitions on the person living with dementia as a unique human being. What are the pieces that are important in that? So when I start thinking about the person living with dementia as a human being, I've got to think about things like their personality. Is this a person who loves being around lots of other people, or is this a person who really likes some time by themselves? I've got to think about things about the person's history. Is this a person who is used to being, very active and out in the community and in charge of everything? That's going to make a difference with what transitions I consider for that person. If this is a person who is a person who has certain routines, that I like to get up early in the morning, or I used to work night shifts, so I want to be up all night long. My natural rhythm is to be up all night long. That can impact. So all of the things about the person as a person, and we could talk about those things for an hour. We could talk for an hour about the impact of dementia, because that could include everything from what type of dementia does the person have, because that's going to impact what we see first and what we see next. We could talk about for hours, plural, about the progression of dementia and what might make sense at certain moments through the changes associated with dementia, whether the person is really, really early or really late in the disease. And, we could spend hours talking about that. We could spend an hour talking about care partners, talking about what are the values for me. I might be really committed to, mom used to love to garden, and I promised her that she would always be able to garden. And so the most important thing in any transition is going to be that I try to protect my mom's need to garden. It might be I made one of those promises that I made in good faith in the moment, that now in a different moment is not a promise that I can continue with in the specific way it was made. If I promised, oh, I'm always going to take care of you at home, that may not be a promise I can keep, but I can always keep that first part of I'm always going to take care of you. I'm always going to be on your side. So we could talk for an hour about that. We could talk for an hour about how much effort care partnering is. And I think that was kind of what Brenda was starting us out with is the stress and the challenge and how do we as care partners keep ourselves healthy so we can truly partner, because if I don't take care of myself through these transitions, I'm not going to have a lot to offer. I'm not going to have a lot to contribute as the journey goes along. And we could certainly spend hours talking about what the resources are. You know, what are the resources in a community, or what are the resources we need to have something be an option for us? We could spend any of those talking about any of those. So when I think about things about the personality, how is this person going to do with lots of people versus needing time alone versus being lonely if they're in isolation, routines and likes and dislikes and things that I have always been in charge, and so I'm going to run any environment that I'm around. Thinking about things like what's going on in the structure of someone's brain, in the chemicals of someone's brain, and the type of dementia and the level of dementia. The idea you see up there, chemical failure and brain failure. We can certainly talk about that and how that impacts dementia. We can talk about things for ourselves as care partners. We can talk about what are, because I think we sometimes undervalue how much managing care takes skill. You know, we talk a lot about the skills of doing things. I think there are probably an equal number of skills that get involved in managing other people doing things. And then the logistics of, as a care partner, how much time do I have and how much energy do I have? And what are my other commitments? And what are my resources as far as, people who should be helping who aren't helping? And so we need to let go of them, and people who are trying to help but not being helpful. And we also need to let go of them and build our team of people who are both helpful and know how to help. Um, then there's the whole issue of the emotions of being a care partner, of the relationship to the person now, the relationship to the person in the past. And then there are these cultural issues of we don't do that. We do this, we don't do that in our community. And so how do we then find ways to in be true to ourselves in our culture and realize that we are living in a changing world? So how do we find ways to make all of those things work together? So I'm going to pause myself for a moment, and I'm going to open it up to the group for the questions that you want to ask about transitions, or the ideas that you have about transitions. So I'm going to pause for a minute, and I'm going to ask if Lisa will unspotlight me so we can have a conversation. I love the spotlight when I think I did it. I love the spotlight when I'm the one doing conversation, but I also, for having conversation, it's nice to be able to see who I'm talking with. So what are your questions about transitions?
You can unmute yourself if you'd like and ask, or you can type it in the chat, whatever works best for you.
Hi, I'm Jackie.
E-
Thank you for this conversation. It could not be more timely for me personally and what my family is going through right now. And I guess I have so many questions. and I don't want to like stray off into like personal stuff or whatever, and want my, personal concerns addressed. But one thing I was wondering is when you are considering um, elevating your loved one to a higher level of care, what are some of the things that need to be considered? We're in that gray area now where we're considering next steps for my father and just are not really quite an acceptance of placing him at a higher level of care and taking him out of the home. He's currently residing in a rehab facility, so we have to make a decision on what to do next. So what are the things that we should be considering when we're making that decision, I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to open it up to the group. So anybody who's been through that transitions, do you have some things that you talked about that were helpful or things that weren't helpful? What were some of the considerations you had?
Melanie, it's Lisa. I'll go ahead and chime in first. So, my dad has Alzheimer's and he was at home. He's a large guy, used to play football. He's tall and built like a offensive line person that he was. And we had a conversation with my stepmom before he needed care about what would it look like to take him to where he couldn't live at home anymore. And one of the things was if he started falling, because she wouldn't be able to help him get up if he fell. And another thing was if he needed more help than she could give in him being able to walk around or transfer. And we had all of these great plans, and what ended up happening was actually more hygiene issues than anything else. So we sort of accounted for, okay, if this happens and if this happens, but we didn't account for what actually triggered that move. And so that was one of the things that we did.
So kind of thinking ahead of time, what will be the things? So what are the things we think we can handle this? We know we can't handle this. It's kind of like I earlier in my life had an opportunity to go and volunteer. And one of the things they asked us to do when we volunteered is to say where you would not be comfortable going. And so at that point when I was doing this, the Middle East was so we put down we wouldn't really feel comfortable going to the Middle East, and we wound up in Africa. So, sometimes you don't know, and it was wonderful. It was amazing. And so sometimes you don't really know what you need to know. So I so agree with Lisa. Think about what can we handle? What's going to be hard for us to handle in our situation, in our build, in with our resources. The one thing I feel really strongly about is when you start to think about it, it's time to start gathering information. So when it starts to tickle the back of your brain, um, I think we're going to need some help. It's time to not just think about it, it's time to do something about it. So that doesn't mean making a decision, it means gathering information. So to start thinking about here are the different options. This is what's good about this one. This was good about this one. It's kind of like finding a school for your kid. There isn't a perfect school. There's the one that offers the best level of support. So thinking about some of those times when you're starting to think about it, it's time to really start looking seriously. I'm a big believer in looking, and I think those setting up those formal meetings with the marketing people, yes, do that, and go on a Saturday evening, go on a Tuesday morning, so to see what life looks like throughout the week. Because, the marketing people are great to get information. You also want to see what's happening in real life. So I'm a big fan of getting those information. I'm a big fan of reaching out to your support group. You know, if you're not in a support group, find a support group, whether it's online or whether it's in person, and say, you know, what are some of the places you've looked at? What was that like for you? So I'm a big believer in that as well. I'm also a big believer in having conversations with the person living with dementia. And so the conversations I'm going to have are not about asking for permission or trying to get agreement, because that may not be something that's going to happen. So I'm not going to say, so, you know, if I ask somebody the question, well, are you ready? Do you think it's time to start looking at going to a care community? The answer to that, my expectation would be, is going to be no. So that's not the question you're going to want to ask. You know, the question is, if you know, if you needed more help than you can get, would you rather it be like this or like this? And sometimes there are some real surprises there. I was working with a family who they were deeply committed to keeping this lady at home. You know, she had been her value, her view of herself was all about, I take care of my home. And so, as part of what had to happen to make that work, they brought people into the home, and she hated it. She hated having people in her home. She was constantly concerned about people are using too much toilet paper. This was during COVID. You know, these people are using too much soap. Nobody uses too much soap during COVID. You know, you can't use too much soap during COVID. And so she was just, you know, it did not work. So short term, they said, we've got to figure out something different. She went to a retirement apartment, did great there. You know, so sometimes we just have to try things. So that's kind of the other thing I would leave you with your question, Jackie, is very few decisions you make in these transitions are permanent. You can try something and see how it goes, and then, yay, this part of it's working. We're going to need something else here. You know, we tried this part worked, this part didn't work so well. So you try something, it's what you're going to try first, because it may not be the ultimate thing that works. Did we kind of answer your question, Jack? And I think you've got some other answers in the chat. Did you see some other answers in the chat,
Hey,
Lisa?
Melanie,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is Kim Hawkins. I,
Hey,
w-
Kim.
I wanted to add something. I think your comments were great. I agree that nothing's theoretical, nothing's permanent, and it's a trial and error, and um, what you see in writing isn't always what you get. So go in, like you said, multiple times and observe things. Um, I want to comment. I'm a regional long-term care ombudsman, and it's a federal program, and it's in all 50 states and in North Carolina, well, and everywhere. It covers all the licensed facilities here in North Carolina, varying levels of care, nursing homes, assisted living, family care homes. But I do think it's important to start as soon as the thought hits your mind and start doing your research then. It's important to go and visit, like you said, and not just go visit when the people in the front office are in. Because you like to think that they're fully staffed then, and that may not be. But to go on Saturdays and go in the evenings and go during holidays and see what the activities are like. I like to recommend to people that when you're looking at institutionalization or placement, if you will, and again, they can't keep, you can stay for a day, or you can stay for as long as you want. You know, there's no law that it's not prison. Um, I try to make recommendations to people to, if you, to kind of think along the long term. If right now the doctor's saying that for whatever reason their level of care is just they need a little bit of assistance with things, to look at assisted living facilities, or and when you look at those, to be mindful that a family care home is a smaller facility than an assisted living. So maybe a smaller setting with fewer people is more comfortable. I think a quality life versus sometimes quantity. So maybe they like the smaller settings. Also think about with my limited knowledge of the dementias and so forth, that the progression, that memory becomes an issue. So you might want to find a facility that does both assisted living as well as nursing. So as my condition progresses, I don't actually have to transition from a whole physical building per se to another facility. I just may have to change hallways. So there's a potential to where the staff that worked with me when I had more of my memory, I'll remember their face, or I'll remember their touch, or I'll remember their voice. So when I'm in a facility where I'm more bedridden, if you will, or in the nursing home portion, I require more care, because staff is not necessarily assigned to a hallway. They're assigned, they're at the building. So I may see familiar faces. So it makes it a little more comfortable for me to make that transition. So those are some of the things, in addition to all the things that you said, which again, I think are great, perfect comments. And when you're considering that, and know that there is an ombudsman that's covering every licensed facility in North Carolina. So if you want to know about some of the complaints and the regulatory things, or just friendly visiting, to reach out to your regional long-term care ombudsman for that particular facility or the county that you're interested in, and just see what their visits have been like. What are some of the concerns that they've run into? Or just ask some questions regarding regulatory to see whether or not how well they, from their perspective, the facilities do. In addition, there's also resources at the county and DSS as well. I'm sorry, I'm long-winded, but that was my
No,
comment.
I actually just sent Lisa a private message that maybe we should invite you to be on to co-host something similar to this, because you've got so much knowledge there. I think that that's really really powerful. So kind of to move on with that, the idea that all of those things are true. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers, because you can look at the star system. Kim shut her camera off. She doesn't want to be part of anything I do. Look at
That's
the
your mom.
numbers. Go to the star system within the state. Look at
Mhm.
the way it's measured for nursing
Mhm.
home select, or nursing home rate, or
Compare.
choose, or compare, nursing
Compare.
home
Mhm.
compare. Look at those numbers, and those numbers do not are not the answer. Those
Mhm.
numbers are a piece of information that you can use, but a 3-star may be better than a 5-star for your
Mhm.
particular person in your particular situation. 1 stars, I'm probably not going to go, but but kind of use that information in that way. I'm going to add in what Emily was saying about so really to have some honest conversation about what does the person really need help with. What can, and I would have 2 sides of that. What can the person still do? 3 sides of that. What can the person still do? What can the person do with support, and what can the person no longer do? And often, if you put that information in those columns that way, it becomes pretty clear. Living at home alone really doesn't make sense if this person can't manage their medications. Living at home alone may not make sense. And then the whole range of things can come out of that. So I love that, Emily, that you added that in. And then thinking about, would it be, so finances, um, it's complicated, because it would seem like care at home might be cheaper, and that balance can really tip when you start thinking about what all that involves. So thinking about what is kind of the break-even point, how much beyond that are we able and willing to go to make it work for home caregiver? And I think what you meant by, so tell me what you meant, Emily, by the transition from being a primary caregiver to being a daughter. Talk a little bit about what you meant by that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so what I meant by that was I realized that with my mom when she was being the primary caretaker for her dad, um, she realized once she kind of got to her end where it was like, this is too much for me. And the guilt of, this is my dad, he raised me, now this is my job to take care of him. But accepting that it was a little bit too much for her. It was too much out of her scope of practice and what she knew what to do with. So then having to transition to a facility, and then now watching her being able to just come in and be that daughter and to have that presence of that and kind of let go a little bit of that worry of managing the medicine and taking him to the bathroom and providing all of that care. Now she could kind of take a step back and kind of be in that role of just being that daughter.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And so to make another list maybe for yourself of what can only you do, because you can pay people to do a lot of stuff, a lot of tasks and a lot of skills, and you can't pay anybody to have your memories, you
Yeah.
know, or to have your familiar voice or to have your familiar stories. So when you're putting all of your work into doing things that other people can do, maybe you can't do the things that only you can do. So you can have that energy to be a daughter. The other piece I might add is when you don't like you may love your person, you may be deeply committed to your person. Lisa, you're shaking your head. You know where I'm going. Where do you think I'm going?
You don't necessarily like your person. Maybe you had a strained relationship with them. And there's also the people that just aren't meant to be caregivers. You're just not the kind of person that maybe is a big nurturer, or you're not the person who can give physical care to someone. That's just not what you can do. So there's a lot of looking at inside about what's realistic for me.
There was a son who loved his mother very much and was heard saying to his mother, "There's a reason why I work with machines, not people." It could be true for any of us, you know, and yeah, some of us are more wired to be in caregiving roles and caregiving relationships, and it can be depleting and exhausting. And so what do you really need to build yourself back up when it gets to be depleting and exhausting? And there's some people who are really good at it and not very good when it's their family, or not really good when I was great and patient with children, but when it comes to adults, I really don't have what it takes to do that. So really thinking about what does work, what is an option for you. So I hope we kind of gave you some answer to your question, Jackie. Did we get a little bit about what you were looking for? A little bit about what you were looking for? Cool.
Yes,
So
thank
what
you.
about, yeah, so what about another question?
Melanie, I know there was a question asked in the comments. I'm not sure. I mean, in the questions that were sent in, and you kind of touched on this, but I think this may apply to everybody, is how do you have that conversation with your person who has dementia? Maybe there's just a little dementia, maybe there's a lot more going on, but how do you have a conversation about transitions in care? Like, I'm going to bring someone into the house to help us.
Hmm.
Or maybe somebody who is a little bit more involved with their dementia and you're looking at moving them into an assisted living. Do you have a conversation with them?
That's a really great question. And there probably are as many answers to that as there are times that it happens.
Mhm.
But I'm going to add a couple of do's and don't do's. And one of the do's I'm going to add is to have those conversations not be confrontational. And so unmute for just a moment and let's give it a little try. So, hey mom, good morning.
Well, good morning.
So I'm worried that you're going to keep falling, and I think you can't live at home anymore. So I'm looking at some places for you to go live. I just wanted to let you know. Okay,
Well,
so I'm going to pause. Why did I go at that way?
you're coming from a place of care.
I, I'm worried about mom. I want things to go well. I've got to get this off of my chest because it's running through my brain. And the mom is the person that I would always go to when I was making these kinds of, and so it seems the right, and ooh, not so good. So what's the first thing I need to change?
Probably how you just approach it. You can't just throw it out there that I need to.
Sure.
You're one that I'm falling a lot, and I may be self-protective about that, but two, that I have to move.
Yeah. So that was a lot. So what I might do instead is come in and bring coffee and sit down, and we're talking about all of the things, you know, in the house and the holidays coming up and all of the and so we have a conversation. So we kind of warm up a little bit. And then I might bring it up in a couple of different ways. I might bring it up that you know, Mom, I was reading something that was talking about falls.
Oh.
And it was saying that falls are really dangerous for people. What do you think about that?
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure. I've fell last week and my knee's still sore.
Your knee is still sore?
Yeah.
Wow. And that was the day that I just happened to come over. And you so
Yeah.
we got you some ice and we got you some Advil, and yeah.
Mm.
So we can kind of ease into it that way. So Mom, if something were to happen, if you were to have a fall, and heaven forbid you needed some more help, then you couldn't take care of yourself because of this fall, do you have any thoughts about whether you would rather bring people into your house, or would you rather be somewhere else to get that kind of help?
Oh, that's a hard question, Melanie. I would really have to
Yes.
think about that.
Yeah.
I would initially think I would want people to come in and just help me so I could stay here.
Yeah. So that would be maybe what you'd want to try first.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, I think I think that's a really good idea. So here's the other thing I was wondering. I was wondering if we might want to break some of those people in a little bit. So when you could still show them around and kind of still be in charge, um,
Well,
you
yeah, of
might want
course
to
I'm
start.
going to be in charge in my house. So,
Yeah, you're
yeah.
going to be in charge in your house. So if we could maybe see if we could find a couple of people that we liked, if we ever needed them, we would know who to call on. Can we go ahead and start doing that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that would be okay.
So now what have I got Mom to agree to?
Talking to potential caregivers.
Talking to potential caregivers. And then we can kind of see what kind of people seem to be the best fit for Mom. Does Mom tend to do better with men or with women? Does Mom seem to be more comfortable with older people or younger people? We can kind of try some things out when we've still got the ability to make some choices. We've got still got some options because we're starting really, really early.
Mhm.
I also like what Kim dropped in the chat of being mindful of, is this a place where Mom feels safe? Is this a place where we have privacy for this conversation? We're not feeling rushed. So we're sitting around the kitchen table having coffee on a Tuesday. You know, it's not a big, Mom, we've come in to talk with you about what's going on in your life. Nice.
And I know those conversations do happen. And sometimes I think families feel like they have to make a decision right away because there's been a change.
Mhm.
So do you suggest then that we have that sit down conversation? Mom, there's been some changes, or, what if we don't have that time to prepare?
Yeah. So I think having that conversation in whatever way it happens is important. Um, and I'm gonna do it the way I talk to children about sex. You know, if what they're interested in is where do babies come from, I'm not going to be talking about intercourse. You know, so we can have various levels of detail in these conversations. So we could have it from everything is, Mom, what's the thing you love the most about your house? Well, I love being able to sit in my bed and watch TV. So that's something we need to protect, provide, and pay attention to. So kind of thinking about what are those important things. So I'm always going to try to value those, even if the environment might be different than what I thought it might be.
Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. So I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint, just slide through some things really quickly because we threw around a lot of words. We, resources and money and all the different levels of care that are available. Those conversations, we have resources that you can look at about money. We've got people who specialize in money, and other kinds of things. The one thing that is not an option is doing it by yourself. Because I've got to find a better way to say this. I've been trying for years to find a better way to say this because it does matter how much you love somebody. It does matter how much you love somebody. And there's not enough love that you can do this by yourself. People living with dementia, the needs are so great that a person trying to do everything is really not sustainable. And we have way too many care partners not survive to the point where they're able to be involved throughout the progression of dementia. So what are some of those options? Thinking about options home, if the person's going to be living alone, and I'm going to send this to Lisa. I'm going to send this PowerPoint to Lisa, and Lisa will send it out to you. So thinking about, if the person is going to be at home alone or in somebody else's house, what are some of the community support things, an adult day program or a respite that might be part of it? The issue about being at home is having a backup plan, an emergency plan, and a next plan. Because if you have someone scheduled to come in every morning to help the person take their medications, if there's a big snowstorm or if there's a death in the family, that system may not work any longer. So what's your backup plan? What's your emergency plan? And what's your next plan? The next option I put was residential care. So when the person is living in a group, however that group may be, and we've got everything from senior housing where people can live alone independently, they just need meals and housekeeping, to where people can get a lot of support. We can bring in home health and we can bring in other types of things that will make it work for people. Assisted living is a little more care, and I should put in here adult care homes as well, because those are similar kind of regulations, but much smaller organizations. Care homes, I guess that's what I meant by that. Memory care, which is focused on, that term is not really accurate. It's what it's traditionally called, but dementia care might be a better, or brain care might be even better. I don't know. And then skilled nursing home, rehab might be another option. To kind of frame it by thinking about, what does this person want? What, and having those conversations, what's really important to you, and what does that really mean? Because if what I say is, I don't want to leave my house, what about my house do I not want to leave? What are the pieces and the places and the things about my house that really are the critical pieces? What do I really mean by that? What can we afford? Because, I can recommend anything, and if we can't pay for it, we can't have it. And then it seems so terrible, but to never feel like you are finished. And I hate to say that. But most of the time there's gonna be awareness of a next step. So what is our next step? Our next step might be skilled nursing. Our step after that might be hospice and a skilled nursing. What might our next step be? What do we want to try first? And you see here, I put any gym might live in any setting, and that refers to the way I and a group of us are measuring change across dementia. So how do we think about progression or change with dementia? What might work now might not work when that shifts. So GYM is a model that my colleague and friend Tipa Snow came up with, based on occupational therapist model, which looks at every I'll put up a slide real quick, and I won't go into a lot because we actually have some videos of when we're some deeper kinds of things about this, but it's based on the OT model, the idea that all people living with dementia are precious. Everyone's journey is going to be different, and we all have gem states. So people in their sapphire state are sometimes us as care partners at our very, very best. So that is sometimes us when we're flexible and we're creative and we're at our very best. Sometimes when we get stressed or when we're overwhelmed or when we're not taking care of ourselves or when there's just too much going on, we slip into a diamond state, which is we're still oriented, we're still in the present, and we get very rigid and we lose our ability to see other people's perspectives. And that's when I go in and I'm the care partner and I say, Mom, you just can't keep driving. Because that could be a transition. Not driving could be a transition. Mom, you can't drive anymore. You've had wrecks, and I'm coming in with my agenda forward and not thinking about the impact that's going to have on the person living with dementia. Some people living with dementia are in their diamond state where that's really, they don't have the ability to see other people's perspectives. And so they don't have the ability to look at it from somebody else's view. So if I say, you can't drive anymore, yes, I can. So that can be that diamond state. Emerald are people who are living in the past, who are thinking that they should be going home to the farm where they lived as a young person. Amber are people who are living in the moment. These are people who are not having a lot of language, doing a lot of touching and feeling, but not able to really manage their environments very well. Rubies are people who are living in the movement, who don't really have control of their fine motor. They've got strength, but not very much skill. And pearls are people who are living inside, who are people who are really pulled in. They don't have a lot of language. They've got deep reflexes, but not a lot of voluntary motion. So people can be living at home and be in any of these gem states. You know, people die at home. This is the state, right, as people are nearing the end of their lives. People live in their homes until their last breath. And that works for some people with certain resources. It certainly doesn't work for everybody. So people can be in any setting in any of these gem states with the right structure and support. So I'm going to pause myself again and stop sharing and open it back up for more questions. And questions do you have about when is it time, or where is it time? What do I have to have, or where do I need to go, or what are your questions?
I would like to know, or my question is, I guess, um, you hear a lot about it's difficult for a dementia patient to adapt to different environments. So, like in our situation and where my dad is in rehab, we are concerned about like trying to move him home and seeing how that goes. And then with the possibility of having to move again to another place, that would be confusing for him. But then at the same time, you said that, things are always changing and sometimes you have to try different things. So we do have the ability to get him 24-hour care. So, and again, I don't want to make it like a personal thing. I just want to ask a question more in general, I guess.
Yeah. And so the general question is, the value of making a transition early and making one transition versus making a series of transitions. So, and again, there probably is many answers to that question as there are situations. I look at how likely is, so a couple of questions. How are things going? How were things going before? So if things were kind of not going well before, then to think that they're going to be better after an event is probably not likely. So if things were kind of tenuous and things were really, it was getting tight, it wasn't going very well, then we're probably not going to come back after an event and have things go better. So how were things going before? The other thing I might really encourage you to think about is what do we need to make it work? So I'm a big fan of families going, there are a couple of ways to manage it. Having a family go in and do the care for 24 hours and see what is it like, because I may have been perfectly able to manage what my mom needed before she had more compression fractures in her spine. And now she's having so much pain. Her mobility is so different. She really, for her comfort, needs two people, and we're not going to have two people. So to actually go in and spend that 24 hours, if you can do that, to see what does it actually invite, because people like me who do it for a living often underestimate how much is involved, how hard it is, how much work is involved. I take for granted some of the things I do automatically, that somebody without my experience, my background, and my skills, it might be really hard to do. So really I'm a big believer in going in and doing, or at least being there while it's being done, so you have an accurate view, because well, we help, we help her to the bathroom. Does that mean we point? Or does that mean we have to physically move her in and out of the bathroom? So what does that mean? So I'm a big believer in really actually going and seeing and experiencing. And because you can change things, but what I've found often is transitions take a lot of energy. And when you think about the definition of frailty, part of the true definition of frailty is trouble getting back to your baseline. So we have someone who is not doing well, and then we have a change. Getting them back up to their baseline is going to be hard. And then there's another change, and then there's another change. And so sometimes there's value to making a change early when the person can adjust and the people around them can adjust to them. So I feel like in these kinds of conversations, I keep speaking out of both sides of my mouth, because I keep saying, change, go ahead and move early while the person can adjust. And then I say, and being in a familiar place is really important. So it's like, yeah. And I am going to say, there are a variety of ways we can make somewhere new feel familiar. And so one way we can make somewhere new feel familiar is thinking about the environment. So things like, have you ever been in a hotel room and woken up in the middle of the night and had trouble finding the way to the bathroom? Because the bathroom is on this side and you do this, and now all of a sudden the bathroom is on the other side and you have to do that. So if we can set up the room, if we have a choice between this room and this room, and on this room, when I get out of the bed, I go to the bathroom there, and that's what I'm used to doing, that can be tremendously important. So what can we make familiar about not just the possessions in the room, but what can we make familiar about the arrangement of the room? Where is the bathroom? Where is the door? Some of that we can control. A lot of that we can't control. So then if we can't control it, how do we help people find it? And we tend to do a lot of shutting doors. So maybe we take some doors off. We take some doors down so people can see what's behind that door. Or maybe we cover some of those doors up because we don't want people to see what's behind that door, or else the only thing they're going to do is move their clothes around. So thinking about what can we make familiar and comfortable about the environment, and then to think what can we make familiar and comfortable about the routine. So what are things that have always been, if I wake up every morning and the first thing I do every single morning is take a shower, and I'm in a situation where I'm not supposed to get my showers in the morning, I'm supposed to get my showers in the afternoon. It's not every afternoon, it's just some of those kinds of things are going to make real difference. So what are the routines? If I'm used to going for a walk before I eat lunch, those kinds of things are gonna connect me to know what happens next. There's actually a whole approach called nexting, Nexting. Be careful about when you Google it, because sometimes when you Google it, you'll wind up on like a dating site, and that's not where you want to be. But the idea of nexting, as maybe you do, as a trigger for what to do next. So if for example, I wear contacts. As soon as I take my contacts out, I'm gone. I'm worthless, because taking my contacts out mean it's time to go to bed. So I may have to have somebody come pick me up at the eye doctor if I took my contacts out, because I'm lying on a couch in the lobby. But what are those kind of sequencing? So thinking about familiar environments, familiar routines, and then familiar language. So if I've always been called Melanie, and I'm in a place and they're very polite, so they're calling me Ms. Bunn, I don't know who they're talking about. I don't know who they're talking to. So familiar environments, familiar language, familiar routines to help with those transitions, wherever they may be and whatever they may be about. Is there another question? So what are some of the resources you would like? Something about, we're going to send Brenda, or send everybody some stuff about caregiver stress and how to manage stress, and how to manage stress during transitions might be something we need to create about holistically, finding ways to get yourself support in those times and those moments. Some stuff about, Lisa will be sending out the PowerPoint. Maybe sending out some of the links to some of the empathetic communication, difficult conversation kinds of things. Thanks for coming, Dee. Any other resources or questions or thoughts? I'm going to refer you to Lisa and refer you to your local support group for going to have these conversations and how to have these conversations.
And Melanie, I know there was a question about some like safety devices for the home, keeping people safe at home longer, that kind of thing. And I have some good resources for that. I'll send out as well, some kind of technology support kind of things. And I do see we're having, I'll definitely send out information about the regional long-term care ombudsman in your area. I've already got that typed, Kim. Thank you for the reminder. And Emily wrote, it was beneficial to get information on home modifications with cords, rugs, bathroom aids. So we'll definitely send out that kind of information as well, so that if you are keeping your person at home, how can we make that space easier for both them and for you or other caregivers that are coming in? Yeah. Any other questions before we go? You have my email, Lisa Levine. It's llevine@dementianc.org. That's how you got the link for today. Please feel free to send any questions you think of after this to me, and I'll get them to Melanie. And you're also welcome to call the Dementia Navigators here at Dementia Alliance. And all that contact information is in the email as well. And we will get this recording out to you rather quickly with this information. And just want to thank you all so much for joining us today. And again, if you have any other questions or anything that comes up later, and Jackie, jump
Can I
right
ask
in
just
there.
a real quick question? What do the
Yeah.
dementia navigators do? Like what kind of things can we call them
You
for?
can call for anything dementia
anything.
related. You have a question, you want to talk through a
Okay.
situation, you want to brainstorm, you need a resource, you can call for any of those reasons and so many more. You are at your wit's end
Great.
with your family and you need to talk to somebody else, you can talk to them. They're social workers, but they will help you with any dementia related situation.
Fantastic.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Hopefully you got the information from last time about preparing for the holidays. We sent some stress information that time too, but we'll send you a little bit more, but please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again to Asai and Lily. And thank you so much, Melanie. We really do appreciate your time and leading this very interesting conversation. So thank you, everybody.